You may have some offtake agreements with potential clients, but you need 10, 20, 30 millions in order to build the first infrastructure of the company.
That's Bajas, a VC at Founders Futures, where he leads the climate tech pillar with a focus on energy and mobility startups in Europe. Thomas also serves as a board member for 5 energy-focused startups, bringing years of expertise from his time at Meridian, managing renewable energy assets, and as a chief of staff to the French Minister for Digital Affairs. In this episode, Thomas will take us through the importance of energy transitions in the fight against climate change.
Electricity and heat is around 1/4 of all the CO2 emissions in the world. And if you add transportation, it would be more around 35-40% of all the emission.
In the next 45 minutes, we'll talk about the innovations driving renewable energy and electrifications.
Your electric car can provide services to the grid, can provide energy, electrons to the grid or to your home,
as well as the challenges faced by energy startups.
We need to bridge 2 major valleys of death: the pre-seed, where it's still difficult for founders to find money, and then the Series A/B in order for them to build the infamous FOAK infrastructure or assembly line.
And some hot takes.
I mean, we need to get rid of the green premium.
Thank you to everyone listening to this episode, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, don't forget to follow and give us a 5-star review. Enjoy this episode. You already mentioned something interesting, because you said at Founders Futures you had almost a choice of like which industry or which vertical you would like to cover. And today's episode obviously is about energy. I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about why energy within climate tech, like why is it so central to combating climate change and sustainability?
What I think is that energy is the backbone, literally, of our modern economies. There is a linear relationship between GDP and energy consumption throughout the world. And energy is probably one of the largest markets ever. If you think about the exploration, the mining, drilling of minerals, the oil and gas industry, the transportation, the electricity production infrastructures, the making of batteries, solar panels, turbines, and all the consuming tools from phones to washing machines to car, and obviously the production lines in factories. The electricity and energy bills are in the day-to-day of households and companies. It's at the crossroad of geopolitics and sovereignty for obvious reason, but I guess we'll get back to that. And last but not least, the sustainability and the climate fights. And so just for on this impact perspective, electricity and heat is around 1/4 of all the CO2 emissions in the world. And if you add transportation, it would be more around 35-40% of all the emission. So said differently, it's the sector where you can have the most impact.
Yeah, I love that. And I think in preparation for this episode, you had mentioned resources from, I think it was a physicist who said, basically energy is how we transform everything, is how you said it's a currency of the world, because anything from, let's say, your glass or your table or like your desk, whatever, has been produced using energy. It has been transported using energy.
Exactly.
It has been extracted from the ground using energy. So like it is really everywhere and all around us. And as you said, it's really the backbone of the economy, because without energy, at least in the modern world, we cannot do much, right? Like if you remove the cars and the machines and all of the industries, we will probably have a very different lifestyle.
Exactly. And actually we should talk more about power than energy, because if you say energy, you would have to cover calories and thus food and all the agriculture, agribusiness, agri-tech. And so the correct word would be power. But yeah, the energy is like it was Vaclav Smil in from How the World Really Works that said that it's the truly universal currency. And
For sure. And let's use power going forward then. So, talking about the, let's say, it's the landscape of energy, right? Because I think not everybody is very familiar with how it works. Because if I'm just like a simple person, I pay my bill every month for electricity and maybe for some fuel or for some gas. Maybe I just put it in my car, but there's a whole ecosystem behind it. Like it just doesn't come to your home or to your car like right away. Like it's not that simple. So can we go like from upstream to where we produce to downstream to where we have the need? Like how does that flow works and who are the actors?
so first of all, like you said, there is upstream, and where we need to produce more and more energy because the world is consuming more and more energy, especially in growing economies like China, India, and throughout the world. It's a bit less the case in the Western countries, but still. And we need to produce more and more decarbonized energy, so decarbonize our energy mix. There are many ways to produce energy. You have obviously coal, wood, you have oil and gas, you have nuclear power plants, and you have renewables.
And that's interesting because just on this one, like if you go from the first sources that you've mentioned, so oil and gas and wood and coal and all of that, that is really polluting a lot. Like to produce energy, that's emitting a lot of CO2. Whereas, for example, if you talk about nuclear, I know it's a big debate, whether or not nuclear is a great thing. In my opinion, at least nuclear doesn't produce CO2. That's already one good thing. Is it great and how do we deal with it? That's another question. I think it's very hard to answer because obviously the more we produce, the more we have like nuclear leftover. I don't know how you call them, which is very hard to manage. But then at the very top of your list was renewables. And as you said, like we need to produce more renewables, or at least more CO2 free energy, which I think is just like to give context about how that world works. Like in the past, we used to be a lot CO2 focused energy. Like we used to produce a lot of like oil and gas and coal and all of that. And I think we're trying to move more and more towards like either nuclear or like renewable energy. But I'll let you to continue on what happens next. What happens next after producing energy?
But the thing is that first of all, we consume more and more energy throughout the years for the past years globally, and so even if in relative terms in the global mix you see coal, for instance, wood or oil and gas becoming less and less part of the energy mix, we still use it more and more every year on absolute terms. So that's an important thing to bear in mind. And also, one thing is that we need to decarbonize the mix and we need to have more and more renewable energy. So energy that is not based on non-renewable resources, natural resources. But also we need to have, because those means of production are intermittent, but I'm sure we cover that, but those means are intermittent. So we also need what we call dispatchable power plants that are producing energy throughout the day, whether the wind is in or not, whether the sun is shining or not, and whether the river is with good flow, large flow or not. And so at the moment, a lot of discussion around the need for green tech, for batteries is coming from that. How do you make the intermittent producing power plants from intermittent to more dispatchable sources?
Yeah, that makes sense. Because as you said, like people consume power and energy regardless of, when we're producing. Like there is definitely a problem within the energy sector, which is like, how do you match the demand and the offer? Because obviously I'm going to wake up at 8 a.m. every morning and turn on my, coffee machine, right? I'm not going to change it to like 11 a.m. because there's no energy at 8 a.m., right? Like that's the difficult part of energy. But we'll get back to that in a second. I just want to cover first, so what happens next after we produce? Like, how does it get from production to people actually consuming? Like, who are the actors in between?
So in between producers and consumers, you have the grid operators, and so the high tension networks that you see where when you are on the train or on highways. Those are operated by the transmission system operators, the TSO, that are building and operators operating the grid. So that's high voltage, large from large producer and long distance network operation. Then you have the DSO, with a distribution system operator, operating on the low voltage and sometimes small producers, local regional networks, and they are directing and operating the grid and the networks into your home and your factories and your companies.
On this one, just like the DSO and TSO, basically what they manage is, if I just put it very simply, is like all the cables you see on the streets, or like depending where you are in the world, it could be when you're on the train, or like some countries have it underground, but like those are all the cables that they operate, right?
Yeah, and very often those are public companies or utilities with public service delegation. For instance, in France, it's RTE and those the TSO and Enedis, the DSO, and there are EDF subsidiaries. And then you have the downstream where we use energy. So obviously, I've mentioned transportation, so car, trucks, planes, trains, but also the industry, the heat and the power that is used by the industries, and then the electricity. And like we mentioned, we need to power more and more things with electricity. So there is, we hope, a growing back industry sector in France and in Europe. They are spreading data centers, more and more connected homes and buildings with appliances and electronics, lighting systems, heating, ventilation, air conditioning devices. But what we call and I'm sure we will talk about that, but the hard to abate emissions, those are consuming sectors that it will be difficult to electrify. For instance, there is all the production of plastic industry, the production of cement, the production of steel, and the production of ammonia. That are probably the largest industries in the world, and that are consuming a lot of energy, and for most of it, it's coming from oil and gas, coal and wood, and so there are a lot of talking and discussions about how we can innovate on those four.
That makes sense, because I think the way this hard to abate emissions work, or at least, for example, if you talk about producing steel, I think it's because you have to heat it up so hot, basically so warm, to a degree that electricity is very hard to do it that way. Because I feel like electricity works well if you want to just cook something with your pan or whatever. That works well because obviously the temperature is quite low. But I think when we talk about steel, for example, it's probably in the 1,000 degrees or like 500 degrees something, which is very hard, I think, for electricity to go to.
Exactly. Well, you can basically power a big toaster with electricity, and you can go at the moment. There are a lot of discussions, but a bit above 500. There are some technologies talking a bit below 1,000. But for the steel industry, the cement industry, you have to get way above that.
That makes sense. And I think something that's interesting within this industry, and a question I have for you is like, do we lose electricity along the way? Like from producing until it gets to my home, like, is there some losses, like because of, I don't know, whatever processes, whatever, how things work? Like, because I would imagine, for example, if you were to replace electricity with water, I'm pretty sure that we lose water along the way in the transportation system. Like, I'm pretty sure there's somewhere where like some water gets out, or like, it just, not everything gets to my home. Is that the same for electricity? Like, how does the grid works?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we use high voltage networks is in order to lose less electricity in the transportation process. The figure about that is around 5%. You lose around 5% of the electricity you produce compared to what you can use and consume. And so that would be the subject for DSOs and TSOs. But we need to work on the grid. We need to optimize the grid. We need to upgrade the grid, because we said that we want to electrify more and more the consumption and to produce more and more energy. And so the grid will have to I can't remember where I saw this, but in 250 it will have to be double its size nowadays. So we have to invest enormous amounts on the grid to put up with those expected consumptions. And we also have to enable what we call the decentralization of power production, because more and more people and companies and factories and parkings and logistic centers will be, thanks to photovoltaic plants, PV plants on the roof, everything. They will become power producers, and so they will be able to produce for them the consumption that the electricity consumption that they will use, but also for the grid.
I have maybe a tough question to answer, but like, who's going to pay for that? Because obviously, like, when you're talking about, for example, making an upgrade on the grid, I'm assuming that's a lot of money. But by a lot of money, I mean, like, it's not VC money, definitely not. It's probably not private equity money, right? Like, it is like a huge, enormous amount of money, because you need to basically, put more cables, like change the cables all over the country, for example. Like, who's going to pay for that?
You? Me? No, all the taxpayers, and there were discussions this year on the fiscal and budget discussions in France, but the electricity because the price of the electricity that you pay is divided in three. So there is the price to produce it, there is the price to transport it, and there is the taxation price. But since in France the transportation is like a public service, directly or indirectly you pay for the transportation, and you pay obviously for the taxation of it, and so for two thirds. And so they will raise the what we call the TURP in France, so the transportation price in the coming years, and probably also the taxation of electricity, in order to invest in the grid.
That makes sense.
That makes sense, but also it's the problem, and they had the discussion in the National Assembly in France, for instance. But if you raise the taxation on electricity, then it's becoming less and less competitive with oil and gas, which see that the price decreasing in the past year, and so that raises questions.
Yeah, for sure, because obviously you want it to be competitive, otherwise people will never switch. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I think it's where startups come in, right? Like, that's also, this podcast is about climate tech and venture capital. So I think we will transition more to a section about venture capital. But in order to achieve and to solve all of these challenges that we have, be it on the grid, be it on like producing more, be it on changing the way we use transportation, or like, all of the things you mentioned already, we need technology, I think, and we need startups to come in and innovate, because I think big corporates or like even institutions or like, big groups, I don't know that they're able already to innovate enough. I think we need new players that will come in with a new eyes and maybe a bit naive and maybe with, big dreams. But I think we need people like that to be able to solve some of this challenge. So I'd be curious, you've invested already in quite a few companies at Founders Future in the energy sector. What are the key technologies you see, in the energy sector for startups?
So there are green technologies in the energy sector that have been developed for decades now, and that are mature enough to be competitive or close to be competitive compared to fossil counterparts. They are obviously too often mass-produced in China, but that's why that they are competitive in the first place. They are often referred to the new three, so that's electric vehicles, that's photovoltaic cells, and lithium-ion batteries, and they are flooding in Europe, but also in the US and throughout the world. And together with public investments and grants and regulatory incentives, like the end of CO2 emitting cars in 2035 in the European Union, thanks to also AI developments, all that is enabling a new batch of innovation, local innovation. So we see a lot of solutions for production, installation, maintenance, renovation, financing, optimization of assets in energy and e-mobility, surfing the wave of electrification, and that should drive enormous returns, both in euro and obviously in CO2, as this is the most impactful short-term mitigation tool, as we said earlier. Yeah.
If I just summarize what you said already, so basically, what you're saying is that mobility, or at least like electric vehicles, some things that we know how to do. We know how to do solar panels. That's my understanding, and we know how to do batteries, which are maybe not the most efficient from like an impact perspective, but at least those three, like, we figured out. So we're able to somehow store a little bit of energy. We're able to somehow move with electricity, but not too far, with not too much weight. That's my understanding. And we're able to produce energy and electricity through solar panels. That's the things that we're able to do today. But you were saying about the other solutions, and I think to your point about those solutions making a lot of money in the near term. Obviously, when you look at the size of the energy market, if you are able to, let's say, save 1% of the maintenance cost of the grid, that's already like, that could be like $1 billion company or more, which is very interesting. But do you have example of, any of the solutions? So either for production, installation, maintenance, renovation, financing, optimization, do you have examples of companies and the product they have? Because I think it might be obvious for everyone as to what it looks like. Because when you mention it like that, I don't see a startup. I see like a big old company managing the grid. But I think there are new technologies, and people are using technology for those type of solutions.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have a lot of new installers. For instance, in Germany, you have 1,5, you have Enpal. In France, we can mention Ensol or The Plug that are installing charging stations. You have a lot of players that are working on industry assets, so high-consuming factories. Whether it's on the consumption optimization, you have like Energix or Etalytics. You have the flexibility players that are getting paid from the grid in order to reduce the consumption at peak moments. So you have Smart Grid Energy, Energy Pool, Companion Energy. You have grid monitoring players like FlexiGrid, Piclo. You have maybe on the other side data players that are monitoring the production assets like Ampere Cloud, like Anea in Sweden. You have new trading solution in order for producers, independent producers, to optimize their revenue from the markets. And so we can mention Inspired. You can mention the Bor Energy, Next Kraftwerke in Germany. You have grid maintenance players like Gridraven, Archion, Depsys. So you have a lot of, for the moment, small or early stage startups, depending, but let's say before Series B, but a lot of innovation behind the meter and front of the meter.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But just to summarize on what you said, what I hear when you say those words is basically we hear about data, we hear about optimization, so that's software. We hear about new ways of doing things. That's probably artificial intelligence. Like those energy startups are basically the same as everything else that's happening around the world in startups, meaning that they use software, they use data, they use AI, but they just apply it to a different topic. And I think that's something that needs to be clear for people, because I think when people think about energy, they think about the huge, power plants of the world. And actually, no, like we have a lot of startups that are just doing software in order to optimize or to do things differently, which I think is very interesting, how you can merge like a very physical world with a world that's very much, driven by data and, software and all of that. But you just mentioned...
And the data data engineer, data scientists, software engineers, teams in the large utilities and large companies, corporates throughout Europe, those teams are becoming larger and larger. So that's a signal as well.
For sure. And that's a great thing, because we need more people. And I think we need people with great experience from the traditional data science world or like engineering world to go and solve those challenges, which are very difficult, because obviously it's different to sell just a software for like a CRM versus a software for electricity, which then applies a software layer on top of hardware layer, which wasn't often the case in the traditional VC world and startup world before. But nonetheless, very interesting. You just said behind the meter, in front of the meter. I don't think that's something everybody understands. Can you explain it?
Yeah, of course. So behind the meter, BTM is residential and commercial consumption and very local production, and that's managed by the DSO, so the distribution systems. And front of the meter, it's the utility scale, the production, the wholesale trading, and the transmission side of the energy markets. And as I've mentioned, on both sides, you have a lot of innovation, whether on with the AI and data, or whether on more let's say enablers, financing, optimization, and whether on deep technologies based on new chemistry.
That makes sense. So behind the meter almost feels like the last mile. If we think about like, where it's produced from where it's consumed, behind the meter is really like the last mile where like we consume it, and then front of the meter feels more like the rest of the value chain. But within behind the meter, what are the challenges, or like what are the problems that startups are trying to solve there? Because I know quite a few of these startups, so I would love to hear your thoughts.
So first of all, there are a lot of energy efficiency tools that are selling solutions in order for you to better manage your electricity or energy consumption, whether you are a household or a factory or a company. There are also financing tools that are enabling the purchase of an asset that can be a charging station, that can be a PV plant, PV panel that can be any asset, any electrified asset. And there are also networks of installers throughout the continent and so a lot of technologies, a lot of software that are built around that in order for them to be better equipped, more knowledgeable, and to provide the best services to the people. Yeah. And for all the hardware equipments that we've mentioned. So that's I haven't mentioned the heat pumps, but it's obvious it's in that as well. And also and the other part would be to more, maybe more, it's a deep tech, but based into artificial intelligence. It's to better monitor and optimize the energy consumption, but the flow of it. And so you have, for instance, the smart charging, so that we call V1G. For instance, if you're getting back to work at let's say 7 p.m. And you plug your charging station into your car, but since it's a high peak of consumption throughout the grid, your car or your charging station or your software is smart enough to say to the car to start the charging at 2 a.m. You have and it works for cars. It can work for heat pumps and so on. And you have also services to the grid and connection to the market. So it could be a V2G, V2H, so vehicle to grid, vehicle to home, where the battery of your electric car can provide services to the grid, can provide energy electrons to the grid or to your home. Meaning the solar panel onto your roof is producing energy that is not consumed by your home at a certain point of time, stored in your car, and provided whether to the grid or whether to your home because you need it at some point at the end of the day from the battery of the car, and so that you can call the self-consumption of the household. You have also the collective self-consumption, meaning local and more organized between people that are producing energy and consuming energy, ranging from 5, 10, and 20 kilometers at the moment. And so we are creating energy communities, and that's super interesting.
Very interesting, and I love the fact that I can power my TV from the battery of my car. I think that's very interesting. I didn't know that was possible. What about front of the meter then? Like, what are the type of startups that you see higher in the value chain, or like before in the value chain? So like more at the utility scale.
Yeah, we've mentioned that operators are losing 5% of the electricity produced during transmission and distribution, and so there are a lot of innovation around infrastructure and grid monitoring, predictive maintenance softwares based on the AI, and I've mentioned some a couple of minutes ago, and there are a lot of aggregators, traders, asset monitoring tool, so that are managing better based on data, based on weather data, market knowledge, the wind plant, the PV plant, the hydro plant, and so you thanks to AI, you can make a better use and create better algorithm because you have more market data, more data points on the market side and on the asset side. And there you have like a dozen of companies, startup, more or less early in UK, Sweden, France, Germany, Spain, and so on.
Great. But as in any other market, I'm pretty sure those startups face some challenges. And I'm curious, within the energy sector, like what are the typical challenges you see for those startups? Because I'm sure they have similarities and they are pretty common across the entire startup ecosystem. But I'm pretty sure as well that there are some specific challenges within the energy sector. One thing that comes to mind for me is that energy is such a critical topic that you have so many actors within it, which is like governments and big companies and people like consumers and producers and as you said, like the grid managers and all of that. I think makes a quite complex ecosystem. But what are the challenges you see for startups within the energy space?
I would say that they are quite the same as for any startups. And like you said, in Europe, there are many challenges for any kind of startups. And I would say that there are threefold. First of all, you need the people. So you need to keep the best minds, the best engineers, and so on in Europe. You need to remain competitive in terms of incentives, salaries, perspectives, ambition. People have to want to invest money and time and to have the ambition and that can create large companies in our continent, and that's quite a challenge, especially at the moment when we see the Draghi report and so on. But so one pillar would be the teams, the people that are keen on taking risks, that want and are ready and can succeed in quitting a comfortable job at a large corporate in energy in order to start a company. First. Second would be the money. And quite a good, an important, crucial challenge in Europe as well, from the IPO market and the finance and the risk culture that we have to nurture. It's obviously linked to the regulation, and also we need to bridge two major valleys of death, gaps in the financing markets. So the pre-seed, where it's still difficult for founders to fund money when they are from the lab, working at the lab, and then the Series A/B, in order for them to build the infamous FOAK infrastructure or assembly line. So FOAK is first of a kind. So you have been out of the lab. You have raised the first 5 to 10 million euros, and the prototype is working. You may have some offtake agreements with potential clients, but you need 10, 20, 30 millions in order to build the first infrastructure of the company. That's where we see a lot of difficulty for the founders to find the money. Then you have the third pillar, which is the regulation, and it obviously critical for the first 2 points, but a major point for freeing the entrepreneurial engine. So that's obvious, but we need less paperwork, more support, and long-term perspective and incentives. We need a real European markets, harmonize the norms and procedures, and a real and that's not the case in the energy market, but we may have to be inspired by the financial one, but we need real interoperability and continent-wide licenses. So that would be for quite similar than for any startup. But in energy, in the energy industry, the main challenge would be the competitiveness one. I mean, we need to get rid of the green premium. And that's the challenge for probably the next decade. But the solar plus battery, the hydrogen, the ammonia, the SAF or eSAF or any green green energy process has to be competitive with its comparable within the oil and gas and coal industry. And so the questions are when, at what cost, and at what cost, and do you need a price of carbon in that cost of the comparable, obviously, and which one? So that are the questions driving investments in the energy sectors probably in the decades to come.
Yeah, and just for people that don't know, but like the green premium is the fact that people would pay more money for the same service if it's greener or more sustainable. And I think that's a challenge across all of the climate tech startups, because obviously the green premium works only with like certain type of people that are either very wealthy or like that care very much about climate change. But obviously we need everyone to be on board, and not everybody is able to pay more for the same service, or neither they are not able because they are financially constrained, or they simply don't want to. And that's something that I can understand as well. And that's definitely a main challenge within the climate tech ecosystem. But what role venture capital plays within this ecosystem? Because for me, when I think about VC, and you were mentioning about pre-seed earlier, I see VC as an enabler for early stage innovation. And I know pre-seed is always a bit tricky. Like not a lot of VCs want to go pre-seed because it's like very, very, very risky. But I see them as like enablers for this, research projects to come to life and build the business. I see VCs as potential networkers, I would say, like people that are able to connect to other people, because obviously VCs have usually high and wide networks. And in your case, for example, it's interesting because you have a network in politics, you have a network in PE funds, you have a network in VC with other entrepreneurs. Like you can definitely help on that aspect. And I also see VC as a signal to the market, which I think is very interesting, because the more VC invest in certain type of technology very early stage, the more it may attract further investment or further even like consumers or like further opportunities for the startups. Because like if every VC in the world invests in like smart grid, then maybe it means that a lot of people think that smart grid is a great option, right? But on your side, like what do you think is the role of venture capital within the energy sector? Like what is the main challenge VCs are trying to solve?
Our industry is based on the providing capital and support, networks, expertise, like you mentioned, but capital to businesses with enormous ambition and a path to profitability that can be long. That's what the industry is based on, and so we have to make bets on teams with the ambition and the abilities, the capabilities of building champions in the short, for instance, in the energy sectors. And so we provide capital, let's say 500k euros, 1, 2, 3 millions, the first millions of the companies for early stage startups, and we try to as partners of co-founders to build the backbone of the companies and to put it in the right direction of the first years of its inception, and that's what we tend to do at and focus on doing at Founders Futures and at all the early stage VCs throughout the continent.
I agree with you, and I think as you said, like it's really VCs are doing bets in the sense that I think maybe you will agree with me on this one, but like VCs would rather invest in a company that has the potential to become an enormous company, but has a lot of risk along the way, than in a company that could become an average company but has low risk, right? That's the way it works. We're getting towards the end of this episode, but I had a few more questions for you. I think we'll get into the fire questions because we need to be fast and efficient. So you'll have to answer the next few questions in only a few sentences, if possible. What is one green flag when you look at an energy startup?
The founder/market fit. The energy sector is a super complex industry, and you have to whether it's with past experiences, whether it's with a lot of work, but you have to know the industry.
Makes sense. What is one red flag on the opposite?
Well, I would be the opposite of the green one. If it's someone that has been looking at one McKinsey report and working for 3 or 4 weeks until the market, and that has found a way to out of a small niche make a bit of money, but without knowing all the value chain and knowing all the other players, I would pass on that.
What is one advice for someone that wants to invest in energy startups?
Get out of your office and meet with private equity, infrastructure firms, with corporates, large or small, all the potential partners, the customers, all the competition, the service providers. You have to meet with them, to get to know them, to read what they send you, and learn from them, and you have to read and read the utilities shareholders reports. You have to read obviously both the press, everything. But I mean, it's, as I've mentioned, it's a super complex ecosystem. And so you have to be to work. But maybe one more thing about that is that you will never be the most knowledgeable person in the room. And if you want to be, in my opinion, a good early stage startup, you have to work on your convictions. But then your job is to be right before the others. So trust your guts, make bets, and don't only focus on traction or data points that you're used to see with SaaS companies.
Love that. And I think it's interesting because I don't think that every VC would agree with you. I think some VCs are very, very data driven. But I think it depends maybe on your vertical and industry. I think it might be different for the energy sector because, as you said, you need very, very good people to be able to move the needle. What's your, and that's going to be my last question, but what's your 2025 prediction for the year? Like, what's the thing you're looking for in 2025 in the energy sector?
Difficult one. No, but it's the sector is super dependent on prices evolution, of the oil, the gas, the raw materials, the electricity, and so very dependent on macroeconomic and geopolitical decisions. There have been a lot in 2024, and probably a lot also in the coming year. Electrification seems to be on its way, and we can only hope for acceleration. But I will answer with a question, and I'm sorry about that. But and maybe it's not for the year to come, but for the couple of years or the decade to come. But the main question for me is: will the oil and gas majors will succeed in becoming electricity majors? will the OEM, original equipment manufacturers like Schneider Electric, Siemens, and a lot more, will become more and more electricity market players as well. I can mention Tesla, that is becoming quite that. And will we see startups able to compete with those giants? That's the question. For me, I would say that the most valuable assets in the energy markets are, on one end, the relation to the end customer, and on the other end, the ownership of the production technologies. And so any company enabling more competitiveness on those two hands should be, in my opinion, good bets.
Great. I like that. So thank you so much, Thomas. We learned a lot from you today, from how this sector works, from all of the actors that plays a role, which seems very complex, to be honest, from the outside, from all the startups that are trying to innovate, from how you look at startups investment yourself. Where can we find you online if you want to reach out?
You can just type Thomas Bajas on LinkedIn and do not hesitate to DM me and I will answer.
Thank you so much. And if you like this episode and if you like the show, you can always like, subscribe, and comment to support the show. Thank you so much. I will put a lot of the resources that you mentioned in this episode and other resources that you've added to the report in the description of this episode. Thank you so much, Thomas.
Thanks a lot, Hugo.